It's as close to time travel as we're gonna get. This Week in Music History with Marty Miller.
Okay, let's do the week of March 17th to 21st. If you were celebrating St. Patrick's this week, hope you had a good one. Now then, disaster of a week, a really sad week in music history. We'll get to that in a few minutes. It was this week in 1967 that the first woman ever to appear on a Beatles recording did some really great work.
Thinking about it now, I really feel very proud to have been part of it.
Absolute disaster and horror for Ozzy Osbourne this week in 1982.
The home then burst into flames and killed were the band's lead guitarist, hairdresser, and bus driver.
And we didn't know it at the time, but this week would be Taylor Hawkins' last ever show with Foo Fighters. Or anyone for that matter.
Somebody to know.
Zipping through a week in a matter of minutes. This Week in Music History, the podcast.
In 1967 this week, the Beatles were recording a song called She's Leaving Home. It would appear on the Sgt. Pepper album, and it's such a beautiful track. If you've never heard it, do yourself a favour. And how such young fellas wrote something so meaningful at that time. She's Leaving Home featured a harpist called Sheila Bromberg, and she became the first woman to play on a Beatles recording.
It was a bit good, actually. It does feel a bit good.
Quietly turning.
Everybody remembers it for its groundbreaking way of producing pop music. Thinking about it now, I really feel very proud to have been part of it.
In 1978 this week, U2 got the chance to audition for CBS Records in Ireland, and they would have sounded pretty much like this, to be honest.
Got someone, got something, I got you.
2002, the Ramones were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Eddie Vedder of Pearl Jam did the honours from the stage.
I would also like to thank some of the people who inspired us. Iggy and the Stooges, the MC5, the New York Dolls, Lou Reed, and Andy Warhol. And also our contemporaries, Patti Smith, Television, Talking Heads, and Blondie for helping make a vital music scene.
This Week in Music History, a week in less than 10 minutes.
He seems to have been there forever, but he is no longer, of course. 2017 this week, at the age of 90, we lost such a rock and roll pioneer, Chuck Berry. And when it comes to rock or rock and roll or whatever, Chuck had a simple viewpoint on music genres.
The musicians, when they put the music out, they want to insert their character in it. So they call it such and such, so that you put the adjectives in it so that you'll know what they, or how they live, so to speak. Yeah. But rock is rock. And rock and roll is just short for rock and roll. I've been asked this. And I think this is my opinion of it, you know. Yeah. So when we put all the adjectives in front of it, if they're playing basic music, it's just rock.
1982. Ozzy Osbourne's guitarist and former Quiet Riot member Randy Rhoads was killed. When a plane he was joyriding in, you'd know it was the 80s. Joyriding in a plane crashed. It was pure horror.
I'm sure he was sent from somewhere else, because if it wasn't for Randy Rhoads, I know I wouldn't be here.
On March 19th, 1982, while on tour in Florida, Ozzy's band made a pit stop at the home of millionaire Jerry Calhoun, decked out with an airstrip and airplanes. The tour bus driver, Andrew Aycock, was also a pilot who convinced Randy and the group's makeup artist, Rachel Youngblood, to take a quick flight on a small Beechcraft.
He thought it would be funny to repeatedly buzz Ozzy's tour bus.
After the fourth pass, he tipped the bus on the opposite side and it nosedived into the home.
The home then burst into flames and killed were the band's lead guitarist, hairdresser, and bus driver.
And if you thought that was bad, it couldn't get any worse than this. This week in 1991, Eric Clapton's 4-year-old boy Connor fell from a building in New York City, his apartment in New York City. Basically, a window was left open and Connor went to have a look and, oh my goodness, This inspired the song Tears from Heaven. Here's Eric Clapton talking about that horror.
And his mother was hysterical. She was hardly able to make sense. But she said he was dead.
He had accidentally fallen 49 floors from the window of his mother's apartment.
And I remember putting the phone down and calmly walking from my hotel to that place as if nothing had happened. And I walked past the street, and this is a terrible thing of shame for me, which I'll never, ever, perhaps, recover from. And seeing a crowd of people and a paramedic van, and knowing that he was there, and walking by. And I'll punish myself forever about why didn't I run? Why didn't I go to see him? And the truth is, I couldn't. I was so frightened.
This Week in Music History, the podcast.
2022, Taylor Hawkins played his final show with Foo Fighters in Argentina. He and we didn't know it at the time.
Can you find me? Can you find me? Somebody to love.
1976, after a David Bowie concert in Rochester, upstate New York, Iggy Pop and David Bowie were involved in a drug bust, and stuff was found, and the pair spent a night in the county jail.
Mr. Bowie maintains his innocence. He's never been arrested before in his life, and I think it's quite obvious, a man of his reputation, that if he were in fact involved in drugs in any way, he would have been arrested numerous times.
What's your reaction to the treatment that you have received in this city?
I thought I was treated very fairly. I thought everybody acted like gentlemen. Of course.
How do you feel about the police?
I just said.
Well, specifically about the police.
They were very, very kind. Very courteous.
And finally, the anniversary this week of a man we have to be so thankful for. Leo Fender, inventor of the Telecaster and the Stratocaster guitar. He died after a battle with Parkinson's disease, and he was 82 at the time. A great worker to the very end, apparently.
Because Leo died in 91, and he worked right up until literally the day before he died. He had been at work that day, and I think he passed away that evening.
And that is a look at the week of March 17th until 21st in music history. Thank you for listening. Hope you learned something. Let's do it again next week.
Zipping through a week in a matter of minutes. This Week in Music History, the podcast.